everyone. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us. My name is Nathan Kolb, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about how to read a Creditsafe credit report. And it's a big topic, but we're going to be talking about that as we go forward. And we have a very familiar face here on the webinar, probably almost as familiar as mine. Mark, I think you've done just about as many of these as I have. Mark Edwards is the Managing Director of Creditsafe USA. He is a registered global credit professional with a history in business information. He's years and years of experience in portfolio management, credit and risk solution, business development. I could keep going on and on, but you'll see his expertise and his experience as he talks. And it's always great to have you on here, Mark. So thanks for being with me again today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And before you kind of jump in, I was hoping to ask the audience, folks, if you would just drop the answers again into that Q&A, that question and answer section. But what are you actually using credit reports for? You know, most of you in the audience are credit and finance professionals. You know what a credit report is. Maybe you're trying to understand Creditsafe's specific setup, or you're trying to understand different ways to use a credit report or something like that. But what are you currently using credit reports for? So that's the question. Go ahead, drop those answers in there as I turn this over to Mark, and then I'll break in. It'll give me a good reason to interrupt him and give him some answers here. So Mark, take it away. I appreciate you being here and look forward to what you got to talk about today.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nathan. Just to echo what Nathan requests, it's really invaluable information for us to learn how you're using the Creditsafe product, and in particular, credit reports. We do have a few more questions coming up through this webinar, but let's kind of dive into the topic. This is one of my least favorite topics because it's a very difficult question to answer, should I say. So Nathan has asked me how to read a credit report. And just by the volume of answers that are coming in, there's many different ways of reading a credit report. And not everyone uses credit information for credit purposes. There's lots of other use cases. So I'm going to talk you through my view of that and the things that I would look for in a credit report. I'm going to operate on the assumption that we're looking at a US credit report and making a credit decision. And if any of you guys have any specific questions, please feel free to fire away. We do have a Q&A session at the end of the section as well. So we probably should start at the beginning. What is a business credit report? So a business credit report is an essential tool for banks, lenders, suppliers, credit grantors in assessing the credit worthiness of a business it intends to do business with. The information contained in a report provides crucial, needed information to make informed decisions. A business credit report is designed to predict the company's ability to meet its contractual obligations based on several factors, including payment history, public records, and other aggregated information. Creditsafe and the other agencies collect data on millions of businesses in the US and aggregate that data into a single business credit report. All the information collected in a report is used to calculate the business credit worthiness. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I hope this works.
And as you're doing that, Mark, I'll give you some of the answers here because I know you're doing a bunch of stuff. We've got everything from folks saying, you know, we're trying to to assess and determine risk for new customers, for vendors, for suppliers. We've got folks looking to do credit limit establishment on customers, continual monitoring on financial health throughout the year. We've got folks that are using multiple different vendors or providers of credit information to make these type of decisions. Some that are just doing it on major accounts, and many that are doing it on any and all accounts that they have. So that's kind of a big overview, but it is an overview of the answers that we're getting right now.
That's really interesting, and perhaps we can spend some time on each one of those, Nathan, towards the end of the presentation.
Absolutely.
So the next section, what goes into a credit report. So I'm going to bring up a credit report, and Nathan, if you could just let me know that you see in my screen.
Yep, we see it great. You're good to go.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, we're going to use US domestic reports as an example. However, the Creditsafe product is basically broken down into sort of 7 key areas of a credit report. All 7 key areas are represented on the summary page of the report. However, we can drill down into various aspects of the report if we're looking for more information. So the first data source or data section is what we call company identification or firmographic information. If you can bear with me, I've just managed to hide my notes. So we call this company identification information or firmographic data. These data elements tell us the basic nature of a business entity: who, what, when, where, why. They help us locate and contact the business and give us a clue as to the size and particular needs. Identity data is sourced from a wide range of sources, included and not limited to the Secretary of State business registries, firmographic data providers, companies like Yellow Pages and companies that sell sort of marketing lists, marketing data providers, we've covered that one, trade payment data suppliers, and other sources of business activities. The data that's contained within this data is legal name and doing business as name, location and corporate address, business indicator, whether the company is active or inactive, phone and website, registration numbers, industry codes, we use SIC and NAICS, the number of employees, the incorporation data and age of a business, and legal form, incorporated, public, LLC, etc. So on the Creditsafe report, this information is displayed under the key information section, and you'll see that a lot of the data elements that I called are listed here. But also you can drill down then into further sections of the report. So for example, if you were to click on company details, it'll give you a little bit more information, and then also a link to the digitized corporate SOS record. The second piece of information or section, data section, is risk ratings. These include credit scores and limits. And I think this is probably what 99% of the people look at in a credit report. And essentially what we're trying to do here is understand how risky it is to extend credit to a business. Credit scores and credit limits are a key part of our offering to our customers. The values are derived by proprietary algorithms, taking into account lots of different pieces of information, and that will differ by country. But in the US, it's particularly driven by the payment habits and payment behavior of the business, its size, its age, its industry, the number of legal events, and a few other factors. So within the credits report on the summary page, you can see we have the risk score. This predicts the likelihood of bankruptcy or delinquency in the next 12 months. 2 colleagues of mine, Richard and Felix, actually hosted a webinar, which I think can be found at creditsafe.com/webinars. Nathan, if I got that right.
Look at you getting that right. You are featured on there quite a bit, but yes, that was just 2 days ago, actually. But that recording is up on the website, and anybody can watch it to learn more about exactly how that risk score is calculated.
So yeah, they provide more insight as to the secret source and what the rating's actually trying to tell us. So I won't spend a huge amount of time there, but please check out that webinar. It's very good. We can then drill down into the scores and limits. So again, we have another tab, scores and limits, and it'll give you just a little bit more information. So you can see what the risk bandings are and how they relate to the numeric value. Another key feature of the Creditsafe report, which I really like and something that we focused on for years, is everything is color coded. If it's green, it means it's low risk. If it's red, it means it's high risk. And you can see that represented under each of the key sections here. So we have our domestic risk score, which is a numeric value, 0 to 100. We also then have an alphabetic international score. So each country has its own rating methodology. So that means that there can be differences, and trying to, particularly with the partner data, trying to squeeze that into a single format can sometimes be difficult. So what we've done is actually standardize the risk bandings across the 160 countries that we have, access to. So to simplify it, A through E, A very low risk, E very high risk. There's the credit scores and limits. I haven't really spoken about credit limits. So this is a suggested value, how much the company could receive in credit from you and pay back within the agreed payment terms. The third section of a report is audited financials.
Mark, just before you jump into that next one, there was a question here on the credit limits. Yeah. Is it single company or is that as an aggregate?
So that is for a single company, any one company extending credit to this company.
There we go. Thanks.
The next segment of data is financials. Obviously in the US, not every company has the requirement to file financials. Where they are required, we have them, and they're published here in the financial section and digitized. So I'm just going to go back to summary to show you how we display the key financials on the summary page. So we just give you what we believe is key. We have a nice interactive graph, which you can actually remove data that you're not necessarily interested in seeing and display what you want to see. So in this case, I'm just going to look at revenue and how the revenue has grown in the last 3 years. You may also want to dig into it deeper. So within the financials tab, we have both the full and interim values for the last 3 years. Financial statements contain fine details of the company's financial standing, their assets, liabilities, equity, revenue, and expenses. Public companies have a duty to provide this information to the SEC. These documents are sourced directly from the SEC for both public and non-profit tax-exempt companies. And you will see between each year, we also make it easy to see what is the percentage change from the year before. If it's green, it's positive. If it's red, it's negative. We go back to the summary page. The fourth section of a report is what we call linkage and ownership summary. So this includes understanding information to help you understand the corporate structure and beneficial owners. Many large businesses or larger businesses operate in structures or hierarchies spanning multiple legal entities, multiple business locations. A business usually has their operations centralized in a location, and this is typically the headquarters. That business may open up additional locations, which we refer to as branches within the Creditsafe product. Another thing is a company may own another company that owns the majority of that, and that's what we see within the group information. So here we'll show you who the ultimate holding company is and who the holding company is. In this case, I probably haven't picked a great example because Microsoft is the ultimate holding company. But if we drill down into the group tab, what you'll see here is we're able to list all of the companies that Microsoft Corporation has a holding of. And we'll have the name, the country, the SAFE number, which is our unique identifier for a company, and then the key attributes of those organizations. Each one of these is hyperlinked, so you can click on any one of these companies and it'll take you through to the report or cascade into the report. So you can either go drill down into the group structure or look up, maybe not looking at a parent company, but then you can go to the parent company. We also then have information about other branches, other linkages, and other linked financials. Going back to the summary tab, we then also have legal filings and legal events. In the US, this will include tax liens, suits and judgments, bankruptcies, and UCC filings. And you'll see this is displayed at the top in the headline bar. We'll give you the number of legal events and the dollar value of legal events. However, should you want to look into this, you simply click on the legal filings tab. It's probably worth noting in this particular, we're looking at the US, the legal filings in different countries are going to change. So tax lien is a US specific data item, for example. What we show you here then is data for the company, any of its branches, or any of the companies in the group. So was there a bankruptcy? How many judgments? How many suits? How many tax liens? The total dollar value of the legal events and UCC filings. We also then show you the most recent filings, and again, you can drill down further. So no, these are closed judgments. Then we look at the liens, number of tax liens, and then number of UCCs. Moving on, the sixth and last but one section of the credit report is key people or people with significant control. This is data about principal individuals of the business. This basically tells us who's in charge. I clicked on the wrong tab there. Again, this data is sourced directly from SOS filings, SEC filings, firmographic, and manual research. So you can see then we've got the corporate offices of this particular company. We can click on any one of these companies and it's going to take us through to a director report. So we can actually, rather than look at the company, look at the person and see what are the possible matches there are. The last section of data that I want to talk about, Nathan, is trade payment data. And this is displayed in two areas on the summary report. So we have the DBT. This is days beyond terms. Trade payment data is data that we source from thousands of companies, both customers and non-customers, who share their accounts receivable with us. We take that data, standardize it, anonymize it, and aggregate it to our database. That information allows us to determine how well a company is paying its suppliers beyond its agreed terms. So in the case of Microsoft, for example, if you issue an invoice on net 30, you're likely to be paid around 43 days. So net 30 plus 43 days beyond terms. If we scroll down, the second part we show the information on the summary page is here. We have a trade payment data dashboard. There's lots of information here, and I'm only going to touch on the key items. So typically what you want to see is a high number of trade lines. A trade line is a unique credit agreement between the target company, in this case Microsoft, and one of its suppliers. Now, due to the confidential nature and sensitivity of this data, we don't show you who the other party is. It's completely anonymous. We take that data, then standardize it. So we have $30 million of trade reported to us from nearly 1,200 different credit agreements, and you can see what the aging bracket of that is. The trade payment data is a huge factor in the credit rating. So as you can see, the higher at the moment, there's a high percentage in current. Should this be flipped around and there was a high percentage in 90 plus, the credit score for this particular company would come down considerably. So it's one of the major factors. We also show the information for the group structure. This is a product that is unique to Creditsafe. I also want then to look at the payment data tab. And this basically offers some advanced analytics and digs really deep into the data. So what we're able to do here is to slice down into the summary data, into the industry. So how many trade lines are in each of the key industries and what's the trade reported across that. People like to see how their industry is getting paid. So for example, you might be in utilities. You're not necessarily how interested they are in paying their construction. Make sense? Below that, we can then drill down so you can see the values of reported information, the high balances, past due balances, which is obviously important, and then the trade breakdown by industry. Nathan, I've pretty much covered the key sections of the report.
You've been rolling here right on through. We do have a bunch of questions coming in here, and folks, please keep asking those questions. I'm going to ask several of these that I wasn't able to interrupt Mark for here in just a moment. But we do have another question for you. We said we were going to have a couple, and the question I'd like to ask you guys is what challenges, what obstacles are you facing right now with using credit information currently? What are the issues that are affecting you and your company right now? So while you're answering that, I'm going to ask Mark a couple of these questions that are going on. So again, just drop your question or drop your answer to that question of what challenges are you facing in credit right now in the Q&A area. So Mark, first question I got here is, if there's an error noticed, such as a website or address information or something, how could it be dealt with? Like how to, who should be contacted at Creditsafe? How can it be fixed if there's an error?
There's a couple of ways of doing that, and it's a great question. So all of the credit reference agencies will say, we have the highest quality data and there's never any mistakes, and that's not necessarily true. So when you're dealing with data, there are going to be mistakes, there's going to be mismatches, and there's generally a reasonable reason why. If the report you're looking at is your own report and you spot a mistake, we have a product called My Creditsafe, which allows you to correct any of that information without having to speak to someone. So you can go to the My Creditsafe product, update your report. We then verify that information and get it corrected. If you're looking at someone else's report and there's a glaring error, if you're a customer, you can typically respond to your account manager, raise that. They then send that to our data team to investigate and take the necessary action. If you're a non-customer, you can simply call our switchboard, explain the nature of the issue. Again, that will go through the same process.
Yeah, and I do want to add to that too, folks. If you do spot an issue and you're trying to rectify it, it's not going to happen in an hour. We're not going to fix it in an hour. We have had some folks that expect that, and just we have to make sure that the data is clean, and we got to verify that everything that we're putting up there as best we can is correct. So we're happy to look into it. We're happy to work with you and happy to correct anything that isn't 100% correct. But sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So I do like to point that out. So we have a bunch of answers coming in. So keep answering, folks, or asking a different question if you have this, but I'll move on to the next question. Then we'll go back to some of these answers, Mark. So what is the difference on a Creditsafe credit report between the enhanced score and the risk score? And why can they vary?
Okay. So I need to go to a different report to demonstrate why.
Sure. We'll give you that. And thanks, folks, for just putting all these answers in there. And again, don't feel like you can't ask more questions. We've got plenty of opportunity, and you got Mark live here to answer any questions you may have. So we're going to keep going on with these as he answers them as we go.
Okay, so the question was, what's the difference between the enhanced score and the risk score? So the standard Creditsafe product will only give you access to the risk score. There is data available called financial trade payment data. It's heavily regulated information that's provided to our partners, in this case, who are Equifax, who tightly manage access to this data, and it's not available in our off-the-shelf package. So some of the people on the call may have access. You do have to be credentialed to get access to this data, and there's various stipulations within that data. I think Richard and Felix cover this in their webinar on last Tuesday.
They did touch on it. Yes, they did. Yep.
But it's to answer your question, it's information collected from banks that includes term loans. So where we looked at payment data earlier, this is trade payment data. The enhanced score uses financial payment data. So this is information from credit cards, term loans, business lease, and other open-ended credit lines. It's repeating myself, it's information that's regulated and you need to be credentialed to get access to, and it's not available in our standard package, but anyone can get access to it as long as they pass the credentialing process. I hope that answers the question.
There you go. And then that would be why the scores can be different based on, having more information and different information to kind of do everything.
Yeah, in the example we have here, the actual score drops. It's more likely the score is going to be increased because we have better information.
Right. Okay. Great. So let me give you some of the answers that we're getting on some of the challenges folks are facing. So we've got folks that are having issues with getting bank references. So they're not getting bank references, and they're hoping that our data can actually replace that. They're looking at changes to company risks. whether or not to give new customers credit, and if so, how much they should give.
Just go through the bank references, Nathan. This is a common one that we hear.
Sure.
Creditsafe can be used to complement bank references, and bank references are used to complement the Creditsafe data. They don't necessarily have to replace each other. One of the benefits we see of the Creditsafe product rather than the bank references is instant. So as soon as you look at a report, you're able to make a decision whereby you're relying on a third party to get back to you. There was another, let me go scroll down. Monitoring your customers, I think was
right. Monitoring the changes in risk.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is particularly challenging, essentially when you have more than, a handful of customers, it just becomes, the bigger the number, the harder it is to manage. We do offer tools to assist with that. And I think there have been webinars on those also, but essentially the monitoring tool allows you to upload your portfolio. You put in your parameters. So if you're looking to monitor risk, we can do that in several ways. But typically, if you want to check anyone whose rating drops, let's say 1%, we can send you out an alert. You can set up multiple portfolios so you're not getting bombarded for every single change. And that's worth investigating. You can also contact your account manager and ask them to walk you through the monitoring portfolio.
Yeah, we do have some webinars and an entire landing page all about that. And we are actually doing a webinar next week all about automated decisioning and how that plays into it. So, again, go to that website, creditsafe.com/webinars and sign up for that one as well.
There was another one question, Nathan.
It was onboarding of new customers. And if we bring them on as a new customer, how much credit to extend to them if we extend credit at all?
This is a very difficult question to answer without knowing your internal risk policy and tolerances. Typically companies like to build up a credit history with a company before they get to the level of credit that the vendor is looking for. My only advice here is really, if you're not comfortable with the level of the dollar value that they've requested, dig in, get more information, make sure you're getting the references, make sure you're comfortable with all the data, open lines of communication with the vendor and say, we're not quite comfortable. Can you make us a little bit more comfortable?
Sure. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to jump back into some of these questions. We got 6 or 8 of them sitting in here right now, waiting to be answered. And I'm sure more out there. So the first one here is, if there's subsidiaries, branches, are the credit limits of those included in the overall credit limit of the headquarters company?
This is a tricky one. So essentially, the headquarters should always have a higher rating and limit than the subsidiary. There are a few instances where that's not the case. Each credit report is assessed on its own merit. So we'll look at the data for this company, and then we'll look at this report, and then look at the data for this report, and they're all assessed on their own merit. The headquarter data, the branch data should roll up to the headquarter data, and in theory, they should all have a higher rating and limit than the branch.
There you go. So I'm gonna kind of aggregate a couple of questions here that'll be put together. But with a company that doesn't have a lot of trade lines on it, Mark, how do we as Creditsafe kind of work with the data we do have on the maybe 5 to, let's say, 50 trade lines at best, and then with the other information we have to try and get a really solid score and a solid assessment of the company?
Yeah, so this is part of the challenge of US data. I showed you Microsoft as an example with 1,200 trade lines. That isn't typical. Probably 5 to 10 to 20 maybe is typical. So the US database has made, our company database is 40 million records. 7,000 of those are public companies, which is about 0.01%. There's another 0.4% of large private companies. I think it's about 9% medium companies, And then the rest are made up of SME companies who typically don't necessarily have more than 20 trade debtors. So it's to be used as a guideline. It's not. I'm pretty sure in Microsoft's example as well, they have far more suppliers than 1,200. It's to give you a represented feel of the data that's provided.
All right. So I'm going to ask this again. I know you talked about how to correct anything that's on the credit report. Is there any difference based on what is or isn't incorrect on the credit report? Is there a difference if, say, my address is wrong versus some trade lines are wrong or something like that? Or does it follow the same process?
It's all the same process. We'd approach it in the same way.
Okay. And then do we standardize the data sources as much as possible to help increase our accuracy? Are we using just government data? Are we using other data? Do we give weight to some versus another? How do we handle that?
I think this is the question from Megan Taylor.
Yes.
And I was just trying to just fully understand this. I'll give you my best shot.
Sure.
We do standardize data sources and we do weight the values in those data sources. So the example that we're using here, the legal name from Secretary of State. Secretary of State is one of the data items that we use, and it does have, generally a high value. But we have to consider doing business as names. So sometimes we may use the name that's derived from our trade payment data providers. Let's say 10 data providers have said it's not Creditsafe, it's Creditsafe USA, where the legal name is Creditsafe. So it's a very complex question, but we do spend a lot of time because sometimes the information we receive is conflicted. For industry codes, for example, we may have one provider who say they're a dentist and another one say they're a veterinarian. We've got to pick which one we feel is most accurate, and we don't always get it right. We do the biggest investment that we make is to look into the data and pick the ones that we feel are more reliable. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has wants more information on that, we spent probably 15% of the entire time on the webinar on Tuesday on this exact issue. So if you really want to drill down into that and learn a little bit more, that Tuesday webinar that we did that's up on the website with Richard and Felix will give you a lot more explanation and dive a lot deeper into this exact issue. So next question here, and questions keep coming in, so feel free, folks. We do have a bit of time left, so you can absolutely ask more questions. Is there a way to identify minority, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses, that type of delineation or distinction on the credit report, Mark?
Not in the Creditsafe product. It's something that we are looking closely at. There are providers that do it. There are government sources of this information. However, none of them are complete, and we've never actually just pulled the trigger on it yet. But it's something we're looking very closely at and probably will have very, very soon.
Yeah, I know that can be tough as a veteran who owned a veteran business. Just getting certified to do that was a multi-month, almost a year process. Just to get certified to be called a veteran-owned business by anyone other than myself, even though I am absolutely a veteran and was 100% owner of the business. It takes a lot, so I can understand how tough that would be for us to verify as well, because we do want to make sure that we have as best as possible verified sources, and everything we can do, we can back up what we're putting out.
It's a huge task for us, Nathan, just to we get approached by lots of different data vendors, and we spend a huge amount of time assessing whether this data adds any incremental value. Does it add to our accuracy, et cetera, et cetera. There's billions, if not trillions of dollars of decisions being made on the information. So we have to be careful and we have to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a little bit more of an involved question. So bear with me as I actually am going to read this one verbatim. But more and more often I run into the issue that a company is owned by an investment firm. The actual company I do business with does not have a large limit or was taken over by this investment company. Which one should I use? I'm guessing the investment company or the original company to determine the limit. And how do I know if the holding company would step in case the company I'm doing business with would not end up paying?
There's a couple of questions in that. So first of all, who is your contract with? So whoever your contract with is who's liable to pay for the goods or service you provide, should you provide them in a way that determines you should get paid. I understand the issue whereby a company is owned by an investment company. However, we still rate that company based on the data that's available on that legal entity. We hear it quite a lot when we're trying to sell to people, well, why wouldn't you give me this $20,000 limit when we're backed by XYZ investment company? And we just ask the question, you know, are they going to guarantee this if you don't pay it? And I would just simply ask them the question.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, but I would ask the question, because a lot of the times they're not prepared to pay off the liabilities.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that really, and I'm going to make another plug for another webinar since, you know, I'm the host, we do all sorts of stuff on, but you know, it really comes down to what your credit policy is set up for and how your credit application comes out and that type of stuff. And we have a whole series coming up this summer on credit policy, on how to create a credit policy, how to adjust your credit policy, what things to include, how best to do special cases like this type of thing. All of that is going on with a bunch of experts. We have panelists, great folks coming up, all on that. So, you know, I would just another plug for that going forward. But I think it really does come down to that credit policy. What have you determined within your company to work with, and what's on your credit application? I think it's a great question to ask. If you're owned by somebody else, are they willing to pick up the tab? You know? Yeah,
it's called parental guarantee. Some companies are comfortable with it, some are not.
There we go. So another question here, and I'm going to read it to you. I'm not sure I understand it. So Lisa, if I get this wrong, or if Mark isn't able to answer it the right way, please feel free to follow up here. But I have financial payment data count included within my subscription. What makes one of these to be used?
I think the question is, which risk score should I use, the enhanced or the risk score? The enhanced uses more data and is able to get a more accurate decision. So I would use that one.
Right. Yeah. Because that also includes the financial payment data or the financial trade data versus just the supplier and that type of data. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, just to make sure that we're staying on the same page and keeping everybody there. So Mark, you had mentioned earlier, and I want to go back to it and ask this question before we go any further. Some of you said, you know, I hate answering this question. There's so many ways to use these credit reports, and there's so many things to do with them and all that. What are some of the popular ones that you said? I mean, you've been in this business for a while. You're an expert in this field. What are some of the ways that you see people using this? How are they using it differently rather than just saying, hey, this company's got good risk score. I want to give them money, you know, I want to work with them. So we're going to give them a limit of X, move on.
The last time we did this webinar, you asked exactly the same question.
I know.
Prepared for it. So obviously you have the credit, the credit world, and there's probably an infinite different ways, credit policies, and people look for different things within that. We're seeing a big uptick in the people who are verifying their suppliers. So we've done webinars on know your supplier, know your customer, but it has people are making sure that the suppliers they're working with are valid. Then we also have people who are using it for sales and marketing. So we have companies who are looking to approach a company and they want to gather information, and then research organizations, people who are building reports and want information on companies or analytics. We also then, we're looking at the sort of transactional pull of a credit report. There are companies that basically aggregate this data and pull all of that data into their systems and run lots of funky different algorithms on that to determine different questions. So the answer is, you know, there's just so many different uses now.
Sure. Yeah. We've got industry statistics that are going on based on, you know, payments for that. All sorts of stuff. So it looks like Lisa, I'm gonna bump her here to the front of the line because we were just talking about her question. Looks like we didn't quite answer Lisa's question. So it says, no, I have 500 reports in my subscription, but 239 reports are used. Is this count reduced each time I pull a report, whether I click on that financial payment data link or not?
I don't know the answer to that, Lisa. I will speak with your account manager, just taking a note. I don't know the answer to that So let me find that out and get your account manager to contact you.
And Lisa, you win this prize. I think this is the first question in the, I don't know, 400 webinars that Mark has been on with me that he truly did not know the answer and had to follow up on that. So that's, that's you win a definite prize there. And folks, if you do have specific questions, we will have a link in the email or on the webpage that you'll be receiving. You'll receive an email that'll send you to a webpage with the recording of this webinar, as well as some other resources on here, a link to our credit policy guide, those type of things. One of the things will be set a meeting with Mark. So you can actually sit down for 15 minutes with Mark. You can always contact your account reps. You can always go ahead and do that. But if you want to talk to Mark specifically, we'll set up a time. There's a link right there. It automatically goes into his calendar and gives you a 15-minute slot to just chat about whatever specifics you have for your company for Mark. So Mark, as we're getting up towards time here, folks, if you have a couple more questions, go ahead. We have a couple more here to ask, and I don't want to try and leave anybody out. We've had to in the past, so hopefully we'll get to everybody. So next question I have for you, Mark, we did have just a couple come in when I said that, but I want to get this question in too. So we've got this risk score. Is that the same no matter what? Like, we can't do anything with it. It's just what it is. Or is there ability to adjust these based on a company's specific parameters and to work with them specifically on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the risk score is fixed. This is our proprietary risk score. I would add that it's a non-market specific generic score, off the shelf, out of the box type thing. We do have a product called Check and Decide. You'll notice it listed here. It's a no coding scorecard tool that allows you to, let's say you don't want to use the risk score, but you do want to use elements of data from the Creditsafe report. We do the full process tree for you. It's done in a consultative way where you talk through what you're trying to achieve. We'll build the scorecard. We'll codify the scorecard. You then get the opportunity to test that scorecard. Let's make sure it creates the outputs that you need. It's typically used in high volume credit decisions. You can use multiple data sources, not just the Creditsafe. It's we use a company called Provenir that does all the scoring for banks. So to shorten my answer, we can custom score and risk bandings for you and create outputs that differ from what's available in the standard product. There
we go. So if you need that customization, talk to us. We can work with you on that and get that all set up for you. So here, this is a bit more of a comment than a question, but I think there's a question in here too, kind of inherently. More and more, I'm seeing large companies have LLC spinoffs. My understanding is that those LLCs stand alone. If it does, then you're not going to be able to go back against the parent company. So in some of these, there's that statement there, but kind of inherent in that, in some of these groups and the parent to branch lineage and child company and stuff like that, is this more just for information's sake, or are we trying to take a legal stand on this when we're putting this out, or quite what is the real rationale behind that, Mark?
I can't offer legal counsel.
Right.
I think I agree with this statement that whoever your contracted partner is, that's who's responsible, LLC or any other. However, that's not to say there could be a clause in the contract that says the parent company could act as a guarantor for the child company.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, we're just providing the data. We're providing the information. It's not really legal advice.
Typically, if the contract is between company A and company B, and company B doesn't pay you or fails, they're the ones who are going to be liable for paying you, whether they have a parent or not.
Absolutely. And just one more clarification thing here too. Is DBT based on a 30-day net terms, or are there variants to it?
So DBT is days beyond terms. So whether the payment terms are 30, 60, or 90 is how many days beyond its agreed terms it typically pays. The example I give, if we look at the report that's still on the page, we have a DBT of 0. That means you're going to get paid 0 days beyond terms. So whether the terms are 60, 90, you're going to get paid on those.
Right. So you'll be paid, on or within those terms, rather than when we were looking at Microsoft, where I think it was 13 days after, is they're expecting, on average. And that's
invoice,
what's that?
On a 60-day invoice, you'd be paid 73 days.
Right. And that's a dollar cost weighted average, correct?
Dollar weighted average, yeah. So basically what that means is the higher the dollar value in the higher the aging bracket, the higher the DBT is going to be. So if we look at this report, we have 100% that's current. If we had $100,000 in here, that's going to weigh more than that. So it's going to increase the DBT.
There we go. Good stuff. And we're running up on the time here, so I'm gonna close us out here and not go over today, Mark, as we've been known to do in the past. But first of all, Mark, I want to thank you as always for coming on and sharing your expertise and talking us through all of this. Folks, I want to thank you for being here. Don't forget, you will have the chance, if you have questions that come up later, not only to re-watch this same webinar, but also to set up a meeting with Mark specifically, but you can always set up a meeting with your account rep, call in, talk to them. They are trained to know what is going on within your account and to help you walk through any of these questions or issues, or to help you understand how to do this better, set up the monitoring, talk you through the specific, walk you towards check and decide with some of the specific scorings, all that type of stuff. So Mark, again, thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate you being here today. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks a lot.